probability. What is the probability that the sun will rise in the east tomorrow? This is definitely going to happen, so therefore we can say it is 100%. Also, we can say that the probability that it will happen is definitely 1. What is the probability that the sun will rise in the west tomorrow? That is definitely not going to happen, therefore we can say that is 0%, or we can say 0. What is the probability that a newborn baby is a boy? That will be 50%, or we can say the probability is a half. On the probability scale, you can now see that a probability can be expressed in words: impossible, it's definitely not going to happen, even chance, or definitely. It can also be expressed as a percentage. Impossible will obviously be 0%, and even chance will be 50%, and definitely will be 100%. Furthermore, probability can also be expressed as a fraction between 0 and 1, where impossible obviously is 0, and even chance is a half, and definitely is 1. If we are given the sample set from 3 up to 30 as indicated here, the question states, if you are allowed to pick one number at a time, what is the probability that you will choose an even number? So therefore we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 even numbers. So the chance of picking an even number will be 5 out of a possible 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 numbers. So therefore the probability of picking an even number will be a half, or we can also say that it will be 50%. What is the probability of choosing an odd number? Once again, in the sample set there are 5 odd numbers out of a possible 10, so that will once again also be a half, or 50%. What is the probability that you will choose a multiple of 3? So all of these numbers in the sample set are multiples of 3, so therefore the chance will be 10 out of a possible 10, so therefore the answer will be 1, which will also be equal to 100%. And then lastly, what is the probability of choosing the number 0? 0 doesn't occur in the sample set, so therefore it will be 0 out of a possible 10, or obviously we can just say 0 or 0%. The definition of probability is then the probability P of an event A is a measure of how likely that outcome is. It can be calculated as the probability of A is equal to N of A, where N of A represents the number of favorable outcomes, divided by N of S, which is the number of possible outcomes in this sample space S. It is also important to note that this definition is only valid if all the outcomes are equally likely. For example, when a coin is tossed, it's equal likely for it to be a head or a tail. But if the coin is damaged in any way that it might be more likely that a head might occur, then we can't use this definition. Suppose that you throw an ordinary 6-sided die. Write down the sample set S. So S will contain the events 1 up to 6. Alright, now the question is, the following events are given. Determine the probability of each. The first event A is to obtain a 6. So here the event is written out in words. This can also obviously be written just as the set 6. And now they want us to determine the probability of throwing a 6. So what is the probability of event A to take place? There are 6 possible outcomes, and 6 is only one of these outcomes. So the probability will be 1 out of a possible 6. Event B is to obtain an even number, so event B will obviously then be the numbers 2, 4 and 6. And the probability for event B to happen will therefore be 3 out of a possible 6, and that this can obviously be written as a half. To obtain a multiple of 3, so therefore if we can see the possibility of event C will be a multiple of 3, there are only 2 multiples of 3 in that set, so that will be 2 out of a possible 6 to give a third. The possibility to obtain a prime number, how many prime numbers do we have there? So the probability of throwing a prime number will be 2, 3 and 5. So therefore it will once again be 3 out of a possible 6. What will be the probability to obtain a number smaller than 4, which is represented here by E? Numbers smaller than 4 once again will only be 1, 2 and 3, which is 3 out of a possible 6 to give us a half. And then lastly, to obtain a number greater than 10, so the probability of event F taking place, there is no number greater than 10, so that will be 0. As you can see, it's not always necessary to write down all the possible outcomes, but it is easier if you have an outcome here as a set to see how many elements you do have in that set to determine the probability. But if you can do it without writing out the event, like with probability of C, that's also fine. In event A, there's only one element, namely 6. Therefore, we can also call event A an elementary event. Events B, C, D and E, all of them have more than one element, so therefore we call them all composite events. And lastly, event F does not have any elements, so therefore we call that an empty event.